Last Blood. Yes, the exciting fifth and final installment in the Rambo series, starring Sylvester Stallone in his iconic role as John J. Rambo. This film was released in theaters in 2019, and I saw it. Let's get right into it. First off, I'm a huge Stallone fan, always will be, and always have been, and of his Rocky series and Rambo series. And I have to say, in Creed, which is a spin-off of Rocky, Stallone brought back his iconic character Rocky Balboa for both pictures, and he did a fantastic job as an older version of Rocky Balboa. So he did the same thing in this particular movie, bringing back an older version of John Rambo one last time. So let's get into it. So who's Rambo to begin with? Rambo was created by author Davi Morrell in the early 1970s, and he was a Vietnam veteran, a former Green Beret Special Forces operative who returned from Vietnam after the war. It was not welcomed by open arms. He ended up having to do battle with a corrupt local town sheriff of the United States, and that would be Rambo First Blood, which became a motion picture in 1982, launching the Rambo saga. Now, I have to say, Rambo First Blood, and I've done a review on it, is a fantastic, gritty action movie, one of my favorite movies. Definitely check it out. Check out my review and tell me what you think. But what happened with Rambo is, inevitably, they did a sequel in 1985, Rambo First Blood Part 2, and then in 1988, Rambo 3, is he became more cartoonish, more superhero-ish, I'll say. Rambo First Blood Part 2 is pretty good. I like that. It's an entertaining movie. He went and did a rescue mission to rescue POWs in Vietnam. In 88, they did Rambo 3, but this time he took on the entire Russian army in Afghanistan, so it's a little silly. 20 years have passed, and they actually did Rambo, which is aka Rambo 4, and it was very well done in 2008, starring Sylvester Stallone as Rambo. He's now in Thailand. He reluctantly goes to help a group of Christian missionaries who are kidnapped in the war-torn country of Burma. Extremely violent movie, but it didn't apologize for it too. I actually really enjoyed Rambo 4 more than I did Rambo 3, for that matter. It went sort of back to the roots of Rambo First Blood, the original Rambo movie, and the critics panned it. They said it was too violent, whatever, but in fact, that's what really occurred in Burma. But at the very end of Rambo 4, it either sets itself up for a sequel or it's the bookend, because we finally see him return to the United States after being gone since 85, and he goes to his family ranch in Bowie, Arizona, where we see horses in the background, beautiful scenery, and a mailbox with the rusted name of Rambo on it. And he has this military bag, and he does this long walk down this very long driveway, and that's how the movie ends. So the idea of a fifth and final Rambo movie came out after that, and Stallone himself said, wouldn't it be interesting to see what life was like in that house, many years later, bringing us to Rambo Last Blood. So let's get into Rambo Last Blood, sorry. He is now living in the ranch. He has shorter hair. He's older. He's now in his early 70s, Stallone and Rambo at this point. But I will say, he looks fantastic. He's still in pretty good shape for his age. Very good shape, I would say. And he lives on this ranch with a ranch hand, I'll say, an elderly lady, and her granddaughter, which is also Rambo's niece. And she's portrayed by, her name is Gabrielle. Now, this movie wasn't directed by Stallone or directed by a big director by any means. It was actually directed by a fellow by the name of Adrian Grunberg, who's only done a handful of movies. Get Him to the Gringo and a few other movies. This was also produced by Stallone's own company, Balboa Productions. But Stallone did write the screenplay. He had a few different ideas for this movie. And he went with the idea of, he had a niece who goes to Mexico, gets kidnapped by the cartel, lured into the sex trafficking ring, and Rambo goes on a one-man mission down to Mexico, teams up with a Mexican journalist to rescue his niece. And that's the premise. That was the original premise for this movie, and that's similar to the premise of what happens in this movie. Okay, so that's interesting enough. So what we have here, we have a few different cast members. His niece Gabrielle is played by a really good actress, Yvette Monreal. We then have the caretaker, who is her grandmother, Marla Beltran. She's portrayed by Adriana Barraza. They both do really good jobs here, and we get to see Rambo, what life is like after the fact. He's older, he's living on the ranch, he loves his horses, and as we know in the previous Rambo movies, they discussed he did take care of horses. So that is fantastic. So I gotta say, Seeing Rambo's life on the ranch was pretty cool. He also has this underground tunnel system, which is never really discussed how it came into fruition, whether it's been there for 100 years or recent. But it's basically like tunnels underground under the ranch where he goes down and he makes knives. He has a bit of a war a memorial thing of his past down there, of his old 1960s, 70s Special Forces pictures. And he kind of goes down there to hide. We also see a very realistic portrayal of Rambo where he's battling PTSD and he has various medications that he's on. So you feel for the character. So there's a lot of good aspects for this movie there. I saw the trailer to this before it came out, and go watch the trailer. The trailer looks fantastic. Fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was pumped. I was excited. I couldn't even wait till this movie came out. Matter of fact, I actually saw it in theaters on opening day. So I'll go into the director's cut version a little bit more, because up here in Canada we didn't get that, but in the United States they did. And it basically opens with him actually being part of a search and rescue team in Arizona, where he's going to rescue a couple during a flash flood. That actually was very well done. I quite enjoyed that scene. It was very realistic, very gritty. We then see the life on the ranch. Now there's going to be some spoilers and minor spoilers because I have to dissect this movie. So if you haven't seen Rambo Last Blood, stop watching now and go and see the movie, and then come back and watch my review. Okay, so we see a relationship form between him and Gabrielle. He's been there now 11 years. You see a lot of photos since his return from Rambo 4, basically raising her. She's in her early 20s at this point, and she wants to go to college. Rambo's still a loner. He doesn't want to leave the ranch, but he's got a great connection with his character, Gabrielle. Now we get into a subplot here where Gabrielle, we realize her mother had passed away, but she wants to meet her biological father, who she's never met before, who resides in Mexico. And against her grandmother's wishes and Rambo's wishes, she goes anyways down to Mexico. And this is where a few of the negative things come in here. Again, I don't want to talk about negative things with Rambo, but I have to. Basically, she's driving in a car, and it's like a visible green screen around the car, and it just looks really cheaply done. And it kind of makes you wonder, like, why don't you just put the camera in the car? Because it's so obvious. It looks almost like a sitcom from the 80s when she's driving down to Mexico. The other thing about the con I have is the filming locations in this series, or I should say the movie. Instead of filming in Arizona, Mexico, where it's set, they actually go all the way over to Spain and Bulgaria, and that's where they film this. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's easier to film over there, cheaper to film with movie taxes. I don't know. I honestly don't know. But anyways, that's where they film the movie. But it does, in fact, look like Arizona, Mexico. So you're kind of tricked into that anyways. So anyways, she goes down to Mexico, and I got to say it's very rushed. It's very, very rushed, this scene where she meets her biological father. And it was very cardboardish. There was really no great acting done by this fellow who portrayed her biological father in this movie. Marco Del Leo portrays Miguel. Just very quick. He basically slams the door in her face, and that was the end of it. She ends up at a bar. We see this in the trailer. Somebody slips something in her drink, and next thing you know, the cartels have kidnapped her, drugged her, and they're basically putting her in a sex trafficking ring. Somehow Grandma finds out. She lets Rambo know, and he's furious. So he gets in his truck, and he goes driving down there. And this is where the movie takes a bit of a detour, and it's sort of like the movie Taken. The only difference is instead of Liam Neeson, you have Rambo, and he's torturing people, similar to Liam Neeson, and he takes his big signature knife with him, which is actually pretty cool. So, long story short, he's able to interrogate a few people using some brutal physical methods to find out where she is. He then does something that I didn't like in this movie. He decides to go into a cartel-populated area of the city, and he basically walks right into it. And every cartel member's doing lookout, and they see him coming a mile away and alert everybody. Next thing you know, there's like 100 guys, and I have a photo of this for the movie, where they're surrounding him in a circle, pointing guns in every direction at him. Now, if they did all shoot at the same time, they'd be killing each other because there's massive crossfire. We're now introduced to the two main villains of this movie, and they're brothers. So we have the Martinez brothers, and they're portrayed. One is portrayed by Hugo Martinez, is portrayed by Sergio Peris-Mencheta. Does a great job here too as well. His brother Victor Martinez is played by Oscar Juaneda. Again, really good Spanish actors. They portray these two leaders of the Mexican cartel. But here's my other issue. There's really no backstory with these guys. We don't get to see what the root of it. They're truly what I call cardboard villains, which means there's no backstory. You don't know their motivations, etc. So Rambo has a confrontation with these 100 cartel members, and long story short, he gets beaten like he did in Rocky IV. The only difference is now Rambo and Stallone are 72, so you got to wonder about the healing factor. We're then briefly introduced to the female journalist, the Mexican female journalist. She's portrayed by legendary actress Paz Vega, who's a really good actress. She portrays Carmen Delgado. Again, my problem with this movie is she only has a very brief scene in this movie. She's kind of wasted as far as I'm concerned. But she's essentially there to heal John Rambo and give a bit of a backstory that she lost a loved one with this cartel and sex trafficking ring as well. But there's no more explanation of that. I would have liked to see a more deep storyline on that particular situation, but there isn't. So he goes on a rescue mission to rescue his niece. And this is where I think the movie made a mistake. I would have done it differently. But anyways, he rescues her. She's hiring a kite. She has needles injected in her arms. And she's in rough shape. She's literally dying in front of your eyes here. And Rambo doesn't take her to a hospital, doesn't take her to a clinic. Instead, he puts her in his truck and he's going to drive all the way back to Arizona. So I'm going to throw a major spoiler here because I have to dissect it. And I think it was a mistake. So as he's driving, and I can't tell if it's on the U.S. or Mexico side, she dies. And it kind of angered me because I thought, well, if you take her to a hospital or a clinic, she could have survived technically. So you got to wonder why. But it leads into a plot hole. How did he get across the border? We'll say she's alive in Mexico. How did he get across the U.S. border through U.S. customs with a woman who's near death? Okay? Or if she died on the Mexico side, how did he get her body across the border to the ranch? Because he does bring her body back to his ranch in Bowie, Arizona. And he buries her, has a bit of a minor funeral there for her. It didn't make sense. The plot holes were too big here. We then see Rambo go into Rambo mode. He wants revenge. And this is where there's some pros here, because this is the character of John Rambo. He wants true revenge. He sets his ranch up. And I got to say, the music and the scenes were actually pretty cool for this. Sets it up like the character in Home Alone. The difference is he's going to slaughter these guys when they come to his ranch. And sets it up with every trap possible. And then he's got to figure out a way to entice them back. I will say they did have, at one point in the movie, they did get a copy of Rambo's driver's license where they knew his address. So that plot hole is not there. They do know where he lives. So he goes down, and I'll just say he does something brutal to antagonize them to come up, leading me into the next plot hole. You see about 10 or 12 SUVs with heavily armed cartel members coming to Rambo's ranch. How did they get across the border again? Again, it's just one of those things. Maybe there's a way they got across. I don't know. But again, it should have been better explained. And this is where the movie kind of redeems itself. The last 20 minutes is pure violence. If you're not into violent action movies, I'd say stay away from this. This is Rambo going Rambo times 100 on these guys. But again, the problem I found with this is you didn't know any of these cartel members. You didn't get to know them really. Even the two leaders, you didn't know a lot about them. So there's really nothing leading up to that per se, other than he wanted revenge. But I will say the way he dispatches each one of these villainous characters is pretty original and ingenious. Some of the scenes you've never seen before. I give credit where credit's due. And of course, obviously, we have these underground caves on his ranch. And let's just put it this way. It's in the trailer. He uses those caves to his advantage. So it's a brutal, full-out 20-minute battle. I will say I found that entertaining. But there's just so many plot holes in this movie. The movie feels very rushed. I will say that. It's very fast-paced. It's actually the shortest Rambo movie, believe it or not, of the entire series. It's only an hour and 39 minutes. It's actually shorter than Rambo 3, which I thought was short too. This movie is rushed, and it's also, you could tell it's being edited heavily, but edited in a sloppy way. A lot of scenes just don't make sense. Like, they don't come together like Lego should, you know. I had some issues with that. I gotta say, Stallone was really good in his role. I mean, he looked great for his age. You know, he didn't do anything that would suggest that he couldn't at that age. He didn't jump off a helicopter and land on the ground or anything like that. But he was versatile, able to move around, do these action scenes. The movie does end on a bit of a is he dead or is he not dead Rambo scene, so you don't know what's going on. And then the end credits is this long montage of all the previous movies, but also includes this movie, which I thought was kind of weird because we just saw the movie. You don't need a montage of it. It felt rushed. I will say, going into it with the bar set high for what I expect out of a Rambo picture and what I expect from Stallone, truly wasn't there. I have to say, I have to agree somewhat with the critics on this movie. There was only a very 20-minute portion of this movie. It felt like Rambo. I'd say in the beginning of the movie and the action scene at the end. Other than that, it felt like Taken. John Rambo is Liam Neeson's character. That's basically what it felt like. And again, there was just so many sloppy scenes. You know, the fact that the cartel would beat him to death and then just leave him there and let him live is kind of strange. I didn't buy that. Other than that, Rambo's a very skilled professional in the special forces. Why would he allow himself to walk into a heavily populated cartel area only to be captured by the cartel, who are known to behead people, you know, and torture people and kill people, and just simply asks he wants to get his niece back? Do you think they're just going to hand her over? Probably not. I would expect Rambo to be a lot more stealth or sleuth. I guess where I'm going with this is we've seen some movies of late that are really good, like The Equalizer 1 and 2 with Denzel Washington, where he's an older actor as well, and he pulls it off. It's fantastic original action. Even Gran Torino, where I think Clint Eastwood is in his 70s or 80s at this point, and he plays an aging man that goes against a gang, but he does it in an ingenious fashion where it's realistic, it's gritty, it's good. I think we missed the boat with Rambo Last Blood here. Or if there's another half an hour that they have on the editing room floor, maybe put it together and make it a longer movie and explain who these bad guys are. Because I felt we had a lost opportunity there. We truly did. Matter of fact, afterwards I said, well, how can I make it a better movie? And I came up with a pretty good script myself, using some of the same premises. His niece, his ranch. I thought, what if he had a ranch for PTSD soldiers, and one of them was trying to hide from a black ops team and came there to try and hide on the ranch. The black ops team arrived and basically said, we want him back. And Rambo went into action to protect him and his niece. And it became that huge 20-minute action scene you saw in this movie was the whole movie. That would have been cool, I think. But again, I think there was a lost opportunity here. Was Rambo Last Blood a bad movie? I don't think it was a bad movie, but it certainly wasn't the best. It was my least favorite of the entire Rambo series by far. On a scale of 1 to 10, what do I give Rambo Last Blood? I sadly have to give it a 5 out of 10. That's right, a 5. It's not the worst movie. I would watch it again, but I have to say I probably am being fairly generous in this review because I'm a diehard Stallone fan and a diehard Rambo fan. Yeah, so I think the critics are on par with their reviews on the movie. It could have been a heck of a lot better, and it felt rushed. So I will say that much. Again, there may be another Rambo movie. I would tend to say it's not a good idea. I think at Stallone's age, he still looks pretty good for his age, but he's in his mid-70s now. And I think the realism of having a Vietnam veteran from war from 40 years ago fighting this battle into his 70s and 80s becomes a little cartoonish. What I think would be cool, though, and I will throw this out there for any big movie producers looking, is I think they could do a reboot, an origin tale of Rambo, but in a series on Amazon Prime, for example, called Baker Team, because that was his old unit in Vietnam, and have an updated version in today's world of a young Rambo along an elite special forces team doing covert CIA missions in South America. Build that up for a couple seasons and spin off into Rambo. I think that would be a brilliant idea. Anyways, tell me what you thought of Rambo Last Blood. Leave some comments below, subscribe, like my channel. See you later.